Now we can configure the BIOS. It's just going to depend on the exact system. So you don't have all the same options every time you go into a BIOS setup utility. Some BIOS setup utilities will actually be called CMOS setup. Some will say UEFI, right? And so we know it's all just different, or BIOS to UEFI, just different types of firmware. CMOS, just a way of storing your configuration that's going to be maintained when the power's off. So they will all generally have date and time. They will all generally have CPU options, okay? CPU options, including like clock rate. So if you ever hear of people overclocking a CPU, that means the CPU is rated to run at 3 gigahertz per second, but they've got it running at 3.4. Will that make the CPU more powerful? Yes, but it's got the disadvantage of generating more heat and being past the tested limits of the hardware. So you really do have to be careful doing that kind of stuff because you run into the possibility of the device failing. Hard drive and floppy options, that's generally, based on the type of hard drive. Floppy disk, or that's old school. Obviously, we don't deal with that anymore. Serial and parallel ports, we may not even deal with anymore. But that was a very typical thing you had to go through was when printers were using parallel ports, you had to go through and enable inbound communication on the parallel port, or bidirectional communication. Okay. And you could still, if you have some older antiquated hardware or something, you might still see that on a system. Controlling integrated devices like video cards, network cards, controlling plug and play options, power management options. The boot order is probably the number one thing we would go into the BIOS to modify if it was needed, or, and then maybe also to turn on virtualization support as we were talking about earlier.